Alright, welcome back to a new guide on this channel, and if you're here, I guess you want to know about the Digitakt or DIGITAKT trick conditions. So, it's going to be the fill, the pre, the nay, and then the other options that we have right here. Now, just to get into the groove, I will start with the easy ones and then move on to the next ones. Now, still, everything on this guide is in chapters. So if you look at the description or the timeline, you can jump to a section or skip the ones you don't want. Now, if you like this, please like and subscribe. And if you have the money and you want to buy me a coffee, you can. Check the links at the description. Okay, so let's begin. We need to talk about the A and the B. Is going to be the easiest part of all this. And we're going to do that. We're going to start easy, and then we are going to check, the pre and the nay and everything else, which is a little bit more challenging to explain. It's very simple to understand, but it's just more challenging to explain. Now, I'm going to be doing a 4 in the floor. I'm going to go to grid recording. I'm standing on the kick, and I'm just going to be doing a 4 in the floor, right? Okay. So this pattern is going to last 16 steps. That's all. It's just 16 steps of the same, kick. So what I want to do, I want to add a trick condition to some other place. Now I'm going to go to the trick number 15 and I'm going to be adding a kick. And if I do that, it's going to sound like that, right? So pretty simple. Now what we can do, again, we can add a trick condition to the step number 15, and I'm going to go to the conditions, and I'm going to go all the way to this ones, and I'm going to start with the first one. So then it says 1 and then dot or 1, 2. So what this means is that the number 2 is pretty much how many cycles is going to play of this loop, how many times this is going to loop. And the first one, the 1, it means when it's going to play it. So if we have a 1, 2, it means that it will cycle twice, and then it's going to be playing on the first cycle of the 2 cycles. So now if I play it back, it's going to do 2 cycles. The first one is going to play, but the second one, it's not going to play. And then, it's going to keep looping and looping and looping. Now, this doesn't care. You're just playing the same loop with 16 steps of, 100 times. Every, a couple of cycles is going to play the first one and not the second one. Now, let's do a few. I'm going to be going to the next one. It's going to be 2, 2. So it means 2 cycles, and it's going to be playing on this second one. So if I play it back, I'm going to stop and play. Right. So it's playing on the second and it's not playing on the first. Pretty simple. Now I'm going to keep moving forward. I'm going to go to the next ones. This one is going to be 1, 3. So this means that it's going to listen for 3 cycles, just 3 different cycles, and it's going to be playing on the first one, and the second and the third, it will not play. If I do that and just do play. Right. And then everything starts over. And at this point, I guess you get the idea. And then what you get as you go up on the numbers, on the number of cycles, is you're going to get more options. On the 2, you get only 1 and you get only 2. You don't get 3, 2 because you don't have 3 cycles. But when you get to 3, you have more options. Now you can do 2, you can do 3, for example. So if I go to 3, 3, it's going to be playing on the third. And then when it loops back, the first and the second cycle, it will not play. If I play it again. There you go. And then everything starts over. Super simple, right? Now, as you go up, it's going to get a little bit more complex and a little bit more long, because now it needs 4 cycles. So if you have a 4 bar loop, this, it's gonna, be helpful because it's gonna be playing that variation on the first cycle, but then it will not play it. Now, if I go to maybe 4, 4, it will play it on the last of the 4 bars. So if I play it, the first one, not going to play. The second one is not going to play. And the third one, not going to play. But the fourth is going to be playing. So it's like a fill, right? With just a variation at the end of the fourth. If you go here, you can do 5. You can do, and notice that it goes up. Then you can do 6. So if I'm not going to do it because it's going to take a little while, but and I believe that you get the idea. If I do 8 bars, let's say that it's going to be 8 bars long, and I want to add a fill at the 8, the last loop. So you can go here and just do it, or maybe you just want a variation on the first of the, at the start of the whole loop. So you can do this. So all this just completely up to you. The only thing you need to remember is that the second number is the number of cycles or loops, or loops. Let's say loops, and the first one is going to be when it's going to be playing within that loop. Okay, so I'm going to be removing this kick, and we get only the 4 in the floor. And we just have one page. So it's going to be 16 steps long, right? Now, I'm going to be going to function and page. I'm going to make this sequence 64 steps long. Then I'm going to say no to exit. And if we play it, we have the same thing for 64 steps. So it's going to be 4 pages, 64 steps, right? Okay. And I'm going to be going to the page number 4 is the 2, the 3, and the 4. And I'm going to be adding a kick to the, to the 4th one. So now if I play it back, the first, page has no kick on the 15, the 3rd one doesn't, and on the 4th, we have it. And we are not doing any conditionals right now. We just have 4 pages of the same, pretty much the same thing. So a cycle, when we go to the conditionals, it means the whole damn thing. When it's finished playing the 64 steps or the 32 or whatever you have right here, that's going to be one cycle. So I'm going to be going to that kick that we have on the 4th page, and I'm going to be doing something like, 2, 3. So it's going to be 3 cycles, and we'll only play it on the second one. So first, I'm going to be playing it. It's going to play the 64 steps, no kick on the 4th page. The second cycle, the second 64s, is going to be playing it, and on the 3rd, it will not play it. So I'm going to be playing it. We are number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. Not playing it because it's the first cycle. It's going to go to the second 64s, and on this one, it will play it. Right. Since this one is a 2, 3, it will not play it on the 3rd one. So we are on the 3rd, and it's just not playing it. And then everything starts over. We are back to the first cycle of the first 64, and then it's going to go to the second one, and it will play it. Right now we are on the second one, I guess, and almost there. There we go. All right, and on the 3rd one, which is the last, it will not play it. So this is how it works. It's just pretty simple. The only thing is that you need to be aware of your steps and how many pages you're using, and the length of your pattern. And you really need to be aware before you start adding conditionals. Now, the takeaway is that with this, you can go nuts. You can just go really complex and add different parts that will play maybe on the first cycle, then on the 5th it will not play, and you just can create really complex patterns with this conditionals. All right, so now we need to talk about the pre and the dash pre at the top. The line pre, and I'm gonna call it not pre. Now, these are logical operators. Now, if you come from the developing world, they are just logical operators. So they are like if statements, let's say. So the pre's, the pre and the not pre, what they will look at someplace else within the same track, and if that someplace else, that other trigger that comes before that pre, it returns true or false, well, the pre is going to be true or it's going to be false. So it's just a conditional that reads booleans, and depending on that, it's just going to react or not, no pun intended. Okay, so let's create an example. We have an empty track right here, pattern. I'm going to go to the snare. I'm going to be adding a snare. I want to add a snare, not that one. I'm going to go there, and I'm going to do a 5 and a 3. So we have a snare, 16 steps long, just on the 5 and the 3, and the 13, I'm sorry. Okay. So again, the pre will ask to whatever trigger that comes before that trigger, the trigger that has a pre, and it will ask, dude, are you true or are you false? So just to do something, I'm going to go to the 5, and I'm going to use a conditional. And I'm going to be doing a 2, 2. So it means that this snare will play only on the second cycle, and it will not play the first one. So if I play it, not playing, and the second cycle, it plays. And the thing goes over and over, right? If you don't know how the A and B conditionals work, just go to the previous section. Right. So if I add a pre to the 7th, and this one, again, it's going to be a pre, it will ask the previous one, dude, do you have a conditional? Yes. Okay. So are you true or are you false? So if this is true, this one will be true. And if this is false, this one will not be false. Now, if this one, it's not pre, what this will do is we'll do the same thing. Dude, are you a Boolean? Yes. Do you have a conditional? Yes. Are you true? Yes. If this is true, well, if it's not pre, this one is going to be false. And if this is false, then this is going to be true. So in part, the not pre is just the opposite of pre. Now, don't worry, we're going to create an example. I know that this one is true only the second cycle, the second loop. So I'm going to be adding a snare right there. I'm just going to go to the pre. Remember, this one, it's always looking for true. So if this one is true, and the snare will play, and the snare will play. If this one is not playing, this one will not be playing. So I'm going to be playing this. There we go. When this is not true, it's not playing, this one is not true. And when this is true, this one is true. All right. So this is how it works. This is how the pre works. They look for some other step or trigger that has a conditional to, evaluate it and do something about it. Now I'm going to be going to the opposite. It's going to be the not pre. So now the opposite thing will happen. If this one is true, this one will not play. Because, again, it's looking for the opposite thing. If this is true, this one will be false. And if this is playing, well, this one is going to say, okay, so if you're playing, I'm not going to play. So this one will be not playing. So if I play it, right, this one doesn't play, this one plays. And then this one, it's playing, this one is not playing. That's how the, the not pre works. Right, so all of this is just pretty simple. The thing is that when you are adding more triggers and you adding more things, you add more things, it's just going to get a little bit, more complicated. That's all. But it's just pretty simple to understand. Whatever trigger that comes before, it doesn't matter if the trigger's here, here, here. It doesn't matter. If you have a 64 steps long and the first conditional is on the step number 1 or the trigger number 1 of the first 16s, well, it just doesn't matter. Will always be looking for the sound that comes before the one that was the pre, the pre is playing. So just to give you an example, in this case, the snare, this one, is just right before, the 7th. I'm going to remove this. I'm just going to remove it. And I'm going to be adding a step right here to the 15. So in this case, what will happen is that this one, it has a pre, this one has not pre. So I'm going to go to pre. Remember that this is looking for a conditional that it's true. And now we have no conditionals. No conditionals at all. And this has no conditional and this has no conditional. So this one needs for some other trigger to have a conditional that returns true. Since we have none, it will never play. Never. Now, if this one, I make it a not pre, it's looking for other conditionals to be false. Since we have no conditionals, it will just, play because it's always false. Right. Now, what happens if I add a conditional to this one? I'm going to be going to 2 and 2, which is the same thing we did before. And for now, on the 7th, I'm going to be going to pre and see how this sounds. If I play it back, okay, can you see what happens? So this one needs for the previous one or whatever other, sound that comes before the 7th to be true in order for the pre to be true. And it doesn't care. It's not in the same 16 steps. It just doesn't care. This one is going to be true and sometimes it's going to be false. And it doesn't, the 15, it's not on the same loop when everything loops over and then goes to this one. So again, it's not about cycles or loops or, when you're adding the steps. It's about the sound that comes before this one. So when this one is true, since this one is pre, this one will be true. And when this one is false, since this is pre, this one will be not playing. So if I play it again, we can just check this out. Not playing, not playing, not playing, playing, playing. And the same thing over and over. And the same thing will happen with the not pre. Right, so if I go to not pre and do the same thing, When this one is not playing, this one will play, and so on. So I'm going to be playing this. All right. So that's how it works. It's a pretty simple thing, but the thing is that you need to really be aware, just like, the previous section, where you put your pre's, because this will, evaluate whatever that comes before it. So if you make a mistake, and the pre is just not going to react the way you want to. So you need to really be aware where you're putting conditionals and, where you're using your pre's. Now, there's one more thing I didn't tell you I'm going to show you right now, is that the pre will ignore other pre's. So maybe you're thinking, I have a clean, pattern right here. Maybe you're thinking, okay, so I'm going to be extending in the snare. I'm going to be adding a snare right here. And if I play it, I can make this one, a not pre. Made a mistake. I need to go to the trigger. I'm going to make this one pre, and this one, I'm going to make it not pre. Just like that. So this one will listen to the trigger of this one. No, it doesn't work that way. The pre's will ignore other triggers that have a pre's. All right, so that's a rule of the pre's. Okay, so let's start talking about the nay. Now, these ones are very similar to the pre's. Now, the nay, or the keyword nay, is not a shorthand of a not. It's a neighbor. Yeah, and also they work on tracks and not in triggers like the pre's, right? So what they will do, instead of listening to a trigger on the same track, they will listen to a trigger on the previous track, on the neighbor track. So this one will evaluate the trigger and conditional of neighbor tracks. Now, if a neighbor track has true, nay on the next track will be true, and not nay will be false. And if the neighbor track has false, nay will be false, and not nay will be true. Again, all of this is just super confusing, so let's just create an example. So I'm going to do the same thing than before. We have a clean pattern. I'm going to stand on the track number 1, and I'm going to be adding a 4 in the floor. And I'm going to go to the snare and do the same thing than before. I'm going to do a 5 and a 13, and we have something simple. And as you can see, I'm always giving you, very simple scenarios. And it's because if you go to the web, a lot of the examples you find, about this topic, they show you really complex, patterns, and it's a little bit hard to identify the parts. So almost, it's about the teaching right here, not showing off. All right. So we have something simple, and we want to use this, this nay. So remember how this works. It works with neighbor tracks. If I get out of the grid mode, this one is going to be the kick. This one is going to be the snare, and we know that we are doing something right here. So this one is going to be the neighbor track of the snare, and this will be the neighbor track of the kick, and so on and so on. Now I'm going to be going to the 3, and the 3 is like a tom, let's say, and I'm going to be entering the grid recording, and I'm going to be adding a step for this. I'm going to go to the 6, which is going to be right after the snare. So if I play it, as soon as the snare plays, then the tom plays. And right now we are not doing anything special. I'm just creating the example so you can understand it. Now, I'm going to be stopping this, and I'm going to be going to the track, the neighbor track, which is going to be the snare. And I'm going to stand on the 5. Now I'm going to make the 5 have a condition. So sometimes I'm going to be saying conditionals, and it's because, I come from the developing kind of a world. So, and we use the conditionals. On the Elektron world, these are called conditions, which is, just a variation. So I'm going to make this one 1, 2. So it means that it will play the first loop, but it will not play on the second one. Now, if I play it back, not playing on the second one, right? So that's what the snare is doing. Now, the takeaway from this is that now that the snare track, the neighbor track of the tom has a condition. So this one, the tom, can use a nay to evaluate whatever is going on the neighbor track. And I'm gonna go to grid, and I'm standing on the tom track, and I'm just gonna go to this one, So let me just, zoom the camera a little bit. I'm using nay and I'm not using not nay, right? So if I get out of the recording, now this one has a conditional or condition, and this one has a condition too. Now this one is going to be asking to the previous track, do you have a condition? Is your condition true or it's false? If this is true, this nay that is going on right here is going to be true. So the snare will play and the tom will play as well. But when the snare is false and the snare is not playing, since this is nay is asking for true, then this will not play, right? So it just works like the pre and the not pre. So if I play it back, look what happens. So when the snare is playing, the tom is playing. When the snare is not playing, the tom doesn't play. So this is what the nay will do. It will evaluate the previous track and check if it's true or false. If it's true, it's going to play. If it's false, it will not. Now, if I do the opposite thing and I go to the tom, the same tom, and now I'm going to make it not nay, we're going to have the opposite scenario. I'm going to get out and I'm going to be playing this. Right? So when the snare is playing, the tom is not playing because it's not nay. And when the snare, it's not playing, it's playing, the tom will not play. It's just the opposite scenario, right? Okay. Now, one thing that you need to know is that nays will listen to other nays. So if I go to the tom again, and let me just go again to this track, and I'm going to enter the grid recording, and I'm going to make it nay, right? And I'm going to get out of this mode. So the next track is going to be a clap. So if I go right here and I add something, I'm going to enter grid recording, and I'm going to add it to the 7. Now this clap, will just play. Always in this case. Now the thing is that the nays will listen to other nays, which is something that doesn't happen with the pre's. The pre's will not listen to other pre's. So if I go to the snare track and I make this one pre, let me just go get there first. I'm sorry, nay. I'm going to make this one nay, not pre. I'm going to make it nay. Remember what's going on right here. This one is going to be playing on the second one of the 2 cycles. This one has a nay, and this one has a nay. I'm going to make sure that the tom has a nay right here. So yeah, we have a nay on both. This one is nay, and this one is nay. So this one, remember, it listens to neighbor tracks, so it cannot listen to the snare. But since the previous track, the neighbor track, is another nay, this one will react to that nay. If I play it back, when the snare is playing, this one will play and this one will play. And when the snare is not playing, this one will not play and this one will not play. Right, so that's nay and that's pre, and they are similar at some point. Now, there are some differences that you need to remember. The pre only works with the same track sounds, and the nay is going to be listening to the neighbor track. Another thing that you need to remember is that the pre's will ignore other pre's, and the nay will not ignore other nays, but they will ignore other pre's. So yeah, all of this is just, things that you need to remember. And it's, it gets a little bit complicated when you have longer sequences with a lot of things going on. It's just, takes a little bit of time and a little bit of practice just to dominate this. It's not enough to learn what they do and then just, you cannot just use it right on the fly, right? You just need to practice a little bit of this conditions. Okay, so now we need to talk about the first and the not first. And I have a clean pattern. What I'm going to do, I'm going to be standing on the first track, which is the kick. And I'm going to be doing a 4 in the floor. Same example that we've been doing, right? And I'm going to be going to the track number 2, which is the snare. And I'm going to be adding a snare right there on the 5th and the 13th, right? Okay. So the first and the not first, essentially what it will do, it will play it the first time and then it will just not play it the rest of the time. It's that simple. I'm going to go to the 5th, which is the first snare, and I'm going to be doing the first. So this means that it will play the first loop and then it will not play it. So I'm going to be playing it in 3, 2, 1. and then it never plays again. It doesn't matter if we loop it 100 times, it will just not play it. It only plays it on the first. That's why it's called first. So the name this time makes sense. Now the other one, gonna be stopping this, the not first is, the opposite. It will not play it on the first, but it will just play it, every other time. So if I play it in 3, 2, 1, and then plays it over and over. Right. Okay, so you have a probability right here, and this is a condition. It is a trick condition, and this what it does. It's gonna be playing is like a random, function. Sometimes it's gonna play it, sometimes it will not, depending on the probability. But since this is a trick condition, the pre and the nay, for example, will react to it. So I'm gonna be going to maybe I'm gonna go to the snare, right? So I'm going to be adding nothing for now. I'm going to go to grid recording, and I'm going to maybe add a snare on the 5th. So if I play it back, we just have a snare on the 5th on each cycle. So okay, so I'm going to go to this one, and I'm going to be using the condition right here. When you tap it, you get the condition right here. So if it's 100%, it will play it pretty much every time that we get to that step. Now, if I keep going down, the probability is going to be less, so sometimes it's going to play it, sometimes it will not. And I'm going to go to 50%, and I'm going to do that. So sometimes it's going to play, sometimes it will not. Playing, not playing. Cool. So again, just a probability. Now, the only thing that you need to know right here is that this is a condition. So pre, for example, will react to false or true, and not pre, the same thing. So in this case, I'm going to go to the 7th, and I'm just going to be adding a step right there, a trigger right there. I'm going to go to the 7, and I'm just going to make it not pre. So if I make it not pre, it means that when this is playing, this one will not play, and this when this one it's playing, this is not playing. Maybe I said the same thing. This is not playing, this will play, and this when this is playing, this one will not play, right? It's just the opposite. So I'm going to be playing it, not playing, 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 not playing, not playing, not playing, and, same thing over and over, not playing and playing. So again, the probability is a trick condition, and you can use it to, to your benefit. Okay, so now we need to talk about the fill mode. Now, the fill is it's a good old drum fill that we can create when we choose, when we choose. So I'm going to be playing this. We have nothing. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to go to the kick track, and I'm going to be entering some steps. And again, we are going to be doing the good old, 4 in the floor. Now, the thing is that what I want to do, I want to add type, a fill, type something like that sounds like a fill. So I'm going to be adding a snare on the 15 and the 16. But the thing is that this will play every time it loops, and I don't want this. It's okay. So I'm going to be going here to the 16, and I'm going to say that this one is going to be fill. And this one, the 16, is going to be a fill as well. So notice that they will never play. They will never ever play. And this is because you need to enable the fill mode. And right now we are on grid recording, right? Okay. So notice how right here is flashing. Now what I will do to enable the grid recording, you need to do yes, and you need to tap the page. So page, and it goes. Now one thing you need to take, you need to really, notice is that it will wait for the next loop to do the fill. This is what happens when we enable the fill mode. And then we'll just go back to disabling the fill mode. Now, while the sequence is going, and you know what, I'm going to go down in tempo so we can, see this a little bit easier. So I'm going to go to 100, which is, not super slow, but not super fast. All right. So I'm going to get out of this. And now I want to do the fill on the next loop. So when this loop starts and I do yes, it's not playing it right away, it's awaiting for the next one. And the flashing lights will tell you that the next iteration, the next cycle, then it will be doing the loop. Let's do it again. All right, I'm gonna do it one more time when we hit this. They flash, they become steady, and it's because the fill is on for that loop. All right. So this is, one way of using this. Now, the other one, the not fill, is going to be, just the opposite. It will play the whole time, unless I enable the fill mode, and they will just not play and then keep playing. It's just, the same but the opposite. All right, but still, I'm going to go back to fill because I want to show you something else. So I'm going to be getting out of the grid recording, and I'm going to do play. Remember, the 15 and the 16 are going to be, fills. So instead of doing yes and page to go to the next loop and do the fill, what I can do, I can tap the page, and this will just, do the fill. It doesn't matter on which page or which loop we are. It's just going to go and do it. So if I do this, it's going to do it. If I do this, it's going to do it. And it's not awaiting for the next iteration or the next cycle to do the fill. This is another way of, using the fill. You just can add different, steps or triggers. And whenever you want to trigger them, you do page and it's going to trigger them. Now, right here, we are not in grid recording. You can still do yes and page, and it will wait for the next iteration to do the fill if you want to. You can, still use it. Made a mistake right there, so I'm going to go there, flashing, then next loop is doing 15 and 16. So it's just, two ways of using the fill mode. So another thing that you can do, I'm going to be going again to on. You can latch the fill. So I'm going to be doing page, I'm going to be doing yes, and I'm going to release the page before I release the yes. And notice that all the lights are on. This means that the fill mode is just on the whole time. And if you want to, you just get out by tapping page. Right, so I'm going to do it one more time. I'm going to press page, press yes, release page, release yes. And now fill mode, it's latch. And to unlatch, page. All right. Okay, so that's all. Hopefully you learned something on this one. And if you liked all of this and you learned something, remember to like and subscribe. And if you have the money and you want to buy me a coffee just to say thanks, you can. Go to the links at the description. You have links for PayPal, you have YouTube thanks, and you have Patreon. Maybe you can be a 1-month patron and buy me a coffee that way. Also, remember, I've released other videos about the Elektron. You can check the links at the description again, or you can go to the cards. Everything's going to be there. I'm going to be releasing more about this, and I've already recorded all of these videos, but again, I just cannot release them the same day. So maybe if you check links, you're going to see when the video is going to get released. Okay, so thanks for watching, and see you on the next one.